Alright, so I played the game recently called Paranormasight Curse of a Mermaid. Well, it's a sequel, so it's pretty much the same thing. Only worse, honestly. Not to say that it's bad and I hated it, but I clearly recall the first game being a lot more fun and exciting. Mysteries being better structured as well. In this one, I kinda saw the things coming from too far away, well, except for the final ending. Or at least how to make that ending happen, and I will just spoil one step of it, doesn't spoil the story at all. The player is supposed to open the load menu and scroll all the way down. There will be another save file which plays a small scene. I don't think I would ever think of this, and if in the first game there was a very clever way to mess with the mechanics, in this one it didn't feel very clever. It made me feel stupid, made me think that it's stupid what we have done it, and made me feel stupid afterwards since it seems kind of obvious in hindsight. Anyway, the story is not connected to the first game. There are mentions of it, but that's it. In this one, it's about a very fishy island, surrounded by mystery and tragedy. For whatever reason, people on Kamishima are obsessed with mermaids. Would make sense for it to be about turtles, but hey. And the start is about diving to find a mermaid. For reasons. In pretty much every way, it's the same as the first game. Visual novel, branching storylines, occasional mutually exclusive actions. Sometimes it's hidden stuff in the background or even in the foreground. You can look around, interact with different characters or ignore them completely, yada yada yada, and so on and so forth. I'm definitely a fan of this style of doing things. Gameplay-wise, it is fairly basic, but it's this balanced kind of compromise between pure text and allowing the player to actually interact with the world, with a lot of limitations. Unlike something like a point-and-click where the player generally doesn't see the character's expressions or gets to look at the scene from different points of view. And I can't actually recall a single one with a non-linear storyline now when I think about it. And at the same time, it's more limited than an immersive sim or a CRPG, for example, as the player can't really walk around doing a myriad of different actions or to characters and so on and so forth. Just as, I am very glad there's another game in this style. I wish more developers would adopt it, a creative innovation of visual novels. So, as far as this particular entry goes, the mystery itself was interesting, especially when it comes to the years. The idea is that there are some very important events happening hundreds of years before the game actually takes place. Some of them are actually borderline irrelevant, some are pure myth, and some are actual history. But all of them had an effect on the plot. They are connected and it's not entirely obvious what is important and what is simply fluff. It's a great way to deliver this story. However, the problem is that unlike the first game, it felt like the pacing was a major mistake. For the most part, 3 out of 4 playable characters get to go through the events with gusto. They uncover something new, there are hints of something else, yada yada yada. And then there is Barnum. Amusing fellow, truth be told, but the issue is that his segments almost entirely are exposition dumps. Just non-stop blah 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 Heike, blah 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 mermaids, blah 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 is this village which had this happen, blah 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 blah, and so on and so forth. This would be fine if it was splintered and delivered in pieces to the other characters, or maybe if one didn't unlock the other, and the player wasn't forced to sit through this in a row. But that's not the case, it's just a giant exposition dump, and the problem here is that it's also a story that is not delivered very well either. But that issue is deeper than simply a writing problem. If it was purely bad pacing because the writer decided to deliver unnecessary exposition, I would loathe this. But the idea here is that the story here is Heike, and I am 100% sure most, if not everyone outside Japan doesn't even know what that is. Just give the term a search. Meanwhile, for Japanese people, it's common knowledge. Everyone knows what that is, it's taught in school, there are plays, TV shows, books on that, it's very much like Shinsengumi, for example. Their stories are very well known to everyone in Japan, so Japanese people made a game using that common knowledge. And they needed to create this weird perspective of Westerners kinda knowing this stuff, kinda learning it as they go as well. So the facts covered are sometimes, let's repeat this topic 10 times in a row. And sometimes they glance over it. All the while it's also translated to a wider audience in a language family that is not the same at all as Japanese. I was tempted to try checking it in Japanese, honestly, but my level is so pathetic that I'd struggle to get anywhere beyond what could already be understood purely from the characters and expressions. There is depth that comes from the delivery, even as simple as how some word is written in Japanese could give a major hint to the player. Which is why certain things seemingly keep getting repeated, because in the original they must have said it differently. To explain that with a very basic example, Japanese uses certain pronouns for different people. Watashi is the baseline, generally. Young boys would say boku, girls could go ashi or washi, and someone who is like a criminal, for example, would say ore. When a certain character is all put together, wears a suit and is generally polite, but they randomly throw out ore, that could be a hint that they are hiding something clandestine. Especially if it comes at a special kind of moment, like them getting surprised, so they dropped their guard and spoke in a more natural way. That's the basic gist, and there is a whole slew of verbal tics that could work this way. And the language itself, because you don't use just one word for a specific item, you could use a myriad, and all of them could mean slightly different things and have different connotations. Anyway, it extends beyond that. I am sure every language has their own quirks in that way, but the idea that applies here is that Paranormasight, the Mermaid's curse, sort of fails to deliver information well because it can't be translated correctly. It ends up being this constant barrage of already obvious information. I recall the game's storyteller popping up and going, "Aha! Let's repeat what has happened," and, "Oh, by the way, who's the character who..." Oh, you got it right in one try. And that kept happening again and again. Especially with the big bad. That was honestly kind of hilarious. So, the main villain goes, "Ha ha ha, just try to guess who I am. I bet you..." Wait, really? I had a whole song and dance prepared for that. Okay, fine, you got it right. That's right, that's who I am. That's who I am. And then I would have situations like that save issue I mentioned above, where it's obvious what needs to happen, but I simply couldn't figure out the step in between. The first game had all this as well, I believe. It's been a while, my memory is a little bit foggy, but I think in this one, the sequel, it's amplified by quite a bit. I honestly dreaded going and doing the final ending because it seemed so tedious I had to get spoiled to actually complete everything. All the while nothing new was actually shown, only to get another recap from the storyteller. Yeah, frustrating to say the least, but I don't believe it's enough to make me hate the game. I still had fun, it was still enjoyable. I do believe it's wonderful to see another game in this series. But before I end this, I'd like to mention something I forgot. The game has a grindy dive-in minigame, because that's what you want in your visual novel, grinding. Looting everything not nailed down, and even that too. The controls are entirely alien, as the player can't actually move in any direction with the keyboard or the gamepad, you know, the way you would expect to control any game ever. Instead, it's clicking one button as they look around, which propels them forward a random amount. The same button is used for both movement and interaction. Needless to say, it's the worst part of the game, and I'd cut it out without a second thought if given the chance. Silver lining here is that it doesn't seem to be very long. Uncover one or two plot-relevant things and ditch that stupid minigame instantly. I kinda get why they added it. It's about the mermaids and it makes sense to hide something underwater after all. But the overall execution is truly terrible.